Welcome everyone to Spirit Coffee Talk. Thank you so much as always for joining us. We get together every Friday and we talk about the energies, the insights, spirit messages, whatever is kind of on the table for the day. And what's interesting is we have Friday the 13th right now. Here it is. Whether you look at that as something as really negative or something positive, again, is totally up to you. But on top of Friday the 13th, we also have a full moon, the December last full moon of this 2024 year, this completion,
Ooh.
this closure, happening December 15th, moving from the sign of Taurus, this kind of grounded earthy nature, into Gemini, which is very airy. It's also very relationship based and communication and conversations. And so there's this energy with the moon of kind of like culmination, closure, next phase type thing. So we're going to dive into that today. So welcome, ladies. How are we feeling?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, December's just always so busy. Like I know
Yeah.
it's just so many added things, and we're supposed to be hibernating. Like, we're supposed to
Yeah.
do less, and it just feels like the month is always so packed. And so
Mhm.
I think a healthy dose of self-care is
Mhm.
probably due, and like in the little tidbits that you can find along the way, right? Like when you can take that little extra time for you, or like that is really important
Mhm.
to be able to find those times to get through the busy season of December.
Mhm.
Time
Yeah.
also feels like it's on hyper speed. And I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose. Like it's just like, so many things all at once. Like it's just
Yeah.
fast and intense and whoo. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, time has been a little wonky. Hey,
I can't believe
timelines have been wonky too. Have you guys felt like major timeline glitching stuff?
Huge. Huge. I had one the other
Huge.
day, a very clear one the other day at the dog park where I don't obviously have Maddie on a leash in the dog park. She runs free. I'm walking, I'm on the phone, and then suddenly I'm about 50 meters ahead of where I was, and I have her leashed. And I'm like, when did I put her on the leash? I never put her on the leash. Why is she on the leash? Because all of a sudden she's like tugging me and I'm like, what are you doing? And there's nothing in those 50 meters.
What about the conversation? Was the conversation still going?
Conversation was still going, but it wasn't even like, because I was like, okay, maybe I was so engrossed in the conversation. I just, like you're mindlessly walking.
Yeah. But did you
No.
feel a shift in the
Yes.
in the conversation, or in the way that it felt in the conversation?
It was more like the conversation created a shift in my reality into a different, very near timeline. And
Ah,
it wasn't the conversation that got me, but it was the absolute blank of I have zero recollection putting her back on the leash and no understanding of why I would have put her on the leash in the first place. She's so chill at the dog park. Like if we just don't leash her. She loves every dog and like it was so clear. And it was this time where I was like, I think I just flipped very clearly into a different timeline during that conversation.
yeah.
Yeah. So yes, like I completely get that.
I
Yeah, I've had
literally
some funky stuff too, like really funky timeline, glitchy stuff.
I
Mm.
just had one before we logged on. I was on a Zoom call before this, took my headphones out and like they have right and left on them. So I just put them on my desk, came back, sat back down to log on, went to put my headphones in. And I was like, okay, which one's which? And the right and left were not on the headphones. Like there was no R and no L. And I'm like, I know that these have right and left. I like, where is it? And then one of them fell out of my hand, went under the desk, crawl under the desk, pick it up, right and left are on them. And I'm like,
Yeah.
am I going crazy? Like I
It's
just
wild.
I was looking there. Where was it? And then it's like once that shift of I dropped one, picked one up, and then all of a sudden they both had the R and L back on them. So funny.
Yeah. How about you, Lisa? What are you getting?
Well, I had like it was with the class I was teaching. I had
Mm.
planned a course for 6 weeks and I had them all dated and in my calendar. And I had planned 6 things in my little notebook and done my meditations and stuff. And then when I went to go look for the fifth week, there was nothing. There was nothing. There was nothing in my calendar. There was nothing. And I looked back at the like emails that I had sent out for the dates, and it ended after 4.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was just 4 weeks. And I'm like, I know this was a 6 week thing from the beginning. Everything was signed up, everything was planned, everything was dated for those specific 4 weeks. I was like, whoa, that is wild. Like, and there was nothing in my calendar, nothing to indicate 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I was in a completely different timeline. Like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I guess I'm in the timeline of it being 4 weeks. Like, I don't, like it just threw me so much, that particular one, because I was like, oh man,
Mm-hmm.
that was a pretty big one for me.
Yeah. It's wild when they become so blatantly obvious. Like, so I know some people have described, actually, no, sorry, trying to say three different things at once.
All the
There
timelines just merged.
I know, right? They're all talking. Um, it's amazing when something is so boldly obvious, like driving down a road and suddenly there's a tree there that has never been there before, but the tree is fully grown. It has
Yes.
never been there. And these are these really neat, noticeable pieces of timelines and realities. And I think the more we actually acknowledge it and like go back and question yourself, right? Like go back, because sometimes we do have a misstep for sure. But when you cannot find any explanation for it,
Yeah,
validate the experience of it being a different timeline, because what that does is that starts to open your mind and your capacity to being multidimensional, which we are, but we need to like
totally.
acknowledge it. So I
So
think it's
does
a really neat.
Spirit have any little like tidbits for us that you guys could pull through it all about like why this is becoming so clear right now and why the timelines are being so jumpy?
Yeah. Mm. Okay, I'll go and then you can go, Elyse. Sorry, because there are several things happening at once, which is why it's like this crisscross pattern. It's like if we were to look at the back of a tapestry and try to understand timelines, we'd be like, what? Like it's red and green crossing here. Like it wouldn't make sense. But you flip it over and it's creating the whole picture, the collective picture. And so what's happening is there are big changes happening in the collective timeline for humanity to reorganize, restructure based on some really significant human choices happening at different times. So they're flipping these timeline bits over to adjust as needed. So collective is a huge thing, right? The
Right.
general idea of what the tapestry will look like is switching. But then also, as we're ascending and growing, our conscious choices and how we're creating our reality are actually literally flipping timelines as well, which is why those strings in the back are changing. And on top of that, sometimes our guides or spirit, or however we want to see it, are also sort of flipping something, like throwing an elbow here to just kind of nudge it in this direction too, on top of what we're also creating. So we have like three levels of realities creating at the same time, which we're noticing the differences, right? We might not always understand the linear nature of it because it's not linear, but we like to understand
Mhm.
it as linear. But there's three layers happening and converging at the same time.
Wow.
What did you get, Elyse?
For me, it was also feeling really interconnected with the conversation we were having before starting to record and this full moon. And there's an energy of, and I'm saying this not in a negative. I think our brains and our experiences can perceive it sometimes like quote unquote negative, but there's an air of like darkness that I've really been noticing. And I don't even necessarily like, I think we're seeing a lot of stuff in the world and it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much dark and with that there's light as well. and we can search and see and find that too. And the energy more that I'm speaking of feels like both solstice, which next week, right? We're coming into the darkest day in the northern hemisphere, but also just this, and we spoke about it last week, this call inwards into like some of the deepest layers of ourselves. And with that, there can be this experience of like ick, right? Like, and we've talked about, the dark night of the soul and the shadow self. And I don't know, we have some cards that are pulled, and some of my cards really speak to that. But I've just been, in the last week or so, I've been sitting with this energy of like the dark goddesses and the dark energy, and this like, even like blacks and maroons, and these really, this like dark energy, but in a sense of like warmth and being held and being wrapped in something that we often perceive as negative, or we're told like darkness is bad, but it's not. It can have negative experiences within it for sure. And we can, and again, I'm not speaking of like the terrible things we see that happen in the world. That's not what I'm speaking to here. I think that's more the far end of that extreme spectrum. But this energy of like calling ourselves inward and really deeply being with that. And so to go with the timeline piece, there's a lot of people saying like, what the F? I feel like I'm drowning in this darkness, and I feel like I can't see my way out, and I feel really disoriented, and I feel confused. And there's certain timeline shifts that are happening. And I had one earlier this week that I was like pissed by, to be frank. Like I was like, what the F? Like why did it play out this way? Like, I feel like it completely screwed this like very positive momentum I was having. And I was pissed about it because I'm like, that's unfair. And I was very like victim-y and like about it. And they're saying, so part of these timeline shifts are because, to what you were speaking about, Ginette, the thing isn't supposed to happen yet. And so even though, we're doing our best to like orient towards, make the positive choices, create our reality, they're like, oop, collectively, we're not quite there yet. We're not almost, but just, a little too eager there. Sorry. And so for me, that was my experience, is this timeline, this shift happened. And all of a sudden this like best laid plan that I had kind of like fell apart. On the flip side, when we're sitting in this, crow just flew in front of my window. When we're sitting in this darkness, people are like, like, help me. I'm struggling. I feel lost. I feel disoriented. And there's other shifts that are happening on personal levels that are to try and help give some light, not to get you out of the dark place, because if you're in the dark place, there's layers for you, but it's like lifelines. It's like throwing a life raft to be like, okay, we see you're struggling. There's a little shift. So as much as there might be really hard timeline shifts or frustrating ones, or ones that feel like, what the heck is like, that's not the way it's supposed to go right now, there's also ones, if we can notice them, that are like nudging you in a direction to give you a bit of a life raft in it. Mm-hmm. Those ones sometimes are a little harder for our brain to see.
Yeah. I definitely have experienced many of those where it's like something is in alignment, and then you're like, how is this a life raft? This is not a life raft. But then what usually happens, and this is where the patience piece has to come in, 6 months down the road, you're like, oh, that was completely life raft. Completely. No part of me would wanted to see it. So
yeah.
I can.
Or you couldn't see it until it was hindsight, and you're like, oh shit, okay, that's why it happened that way.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and it's hard though. It's hard in that energy, but I want to speak to some of what's coming within this moon. So like why this moon is really valuable, with it being the last moon in December. this moon in Gemini, this like polarity, twin factor energy, oppositional energy, is
Light and
it's
dark.
light and dark. Yeah, it's like offering a lot or kind of like offering a massive canvas for expressing everything you need to get it all out on the canvas. And then you start with a brand new understanding, clarity, direction, alignment moving into 2025. Like this moon almost wants you to metaphorically throw up on the canvas, right? Like I'm seeing people like throwing paint at the canvas. You know, when the artists have those big canvases and they're like throwing paint and they're throwing textured stuff and they're like, it's all coming out on the canvas is kind of what this moon is asking, which is interesting because it's Gemini is ruled by Mercury, so it is all of the mind, like super mind, air energy as well. It's like pulling everything out because these two cards jumped out earlier, which was so significant. And this first card is the return. And this was really the energy for 2025 for I think a lot of people, which is a new story. You decide alignment and it's coming together, right? There's a lot actually coming together. And then it's followed with the reunion, which is soul recognition, collaborations, partnerships, and friendships. So we have the return and the reunion for an energy of 2025. Like these are potent, especially together. There's a big energy. And so I think the moon, one of the things it brings is this opportunity to like get the grit out onto that canvas, is how I'm seeing some of the energy. Yeah. What do you get, Lisa?
I pulled cards on it and, like right in alignment with everything we were talking about, I got chaos and conflict, right? And in the picture, there's like, I don't know, you can see it very well, but it's like this horse underneath, it's the zebra, but it's wearing this like giraffe type cover. And in chaos and conflict, the wind is blowing in, but it's actually blowing off um a protective layer that maybe we established or used in order to keep ourselves safe and to blend to establish ourselves in a certain system that gave us the illusion at that point that that's how we needed to be or where or whatever we needed to do. But what's happening right now is it's all coming off and it feels yucky and it feels uncomfortable and incredibly vulnerable. But it's absolutely purposeful. And so yeah, it does, it's very hard, of course it is. And then what came out with that was time for a nap. And I love that because it's a little bit of the hermit energy, right? It's coming in and it's doing a lot of our healing and our integration and the transmutation that we're having to, the transmutation that we're having to integrate during this period of maybe letting go of some old stories, some old armor that we've been wearing. If we're letting go of some old relationships that we know aren't in our greatest and highest good, like that's all kind of transpiring right now. So this moon is coming in and it's about relationships and it's about old coming in, but it's also releasing the stuff that is in no longer in alignment, and it's all coming to a not necessarily a confrontational hit, but it is all coming together kind of at once with a lot of these things that are aligning right now. But the time for a nap is saying like balance that with rest and restoration, taking these moments like we said at the beginning to rest, right? And that's going to be it. And then on a completely like that was like to the end of the year, and really truly the new year energy is regeneration, so another R.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very much, the phoenix rising, coming out from the ashes. There's this new growth, these blue flowers that are coming up from the coals, and it's like regenerating from everything that we've kind of burnt to the ground, metaphorically speaking. And then to be fair, which I honestly see this as that balancing act after and everything coming up in like it's going to be for your greatest good and fairness to you, right? Where things are coming back and it's like everything that you've given and that you've done, it'll come up to balance out for you, where it'll be like, oh, it's coming in your favor kind of thing. The jury's in. It's for you. Like you did it. You worked so damn hard. And with the regeneration card, it's like allow yourself to start seeing the green. You know, when like I love this because I live in a frozen tundra. So in the springtime, when you start to see like little blades of green grass, you're like, oh my God, like green is coming, right? It's like that feeling of the regeneration where it's like after that kind of storm and the darkness and a little bit of the like shadows, not a little bit, a lot of the shadow stuff that we've been going through, when you can start to see the sun come out a little bit and the little blades of grass starting to show, Spirit is just really saying, like, just hold on. Like that Wilson Phillips song, hold on for one more day.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
got
right.
this, you got this. Like it's gonna come together, right? In fairness.
Yes.
I love that.
You know what's interesting too? So Spirit's been talking about how 2025 to 2028 is this 3 years of the next phase, I want to say.
Tell
And
me
what
about
I was
that. Tell me
just,
about that.
yeah, I was just pondering right now and I was asking them, I'm like, is this like kind of what the three R's are about? Because there's huge planetary alignment shift in 2025, but
Yeah.
it's based on the premise of how hard you've worked already, how much you've done already. So it's not here to like smack us across the face kind of thing, energetically, like 2020 to 2024, essentially.
Yeah,
It's
I was gonna say this better not be something where it's like,
no.
okay, now 25 to 2028, you're in for a bunch of yuckiness. I'm like,
Well,
I don't think people can take it.
no, but I think there is yuckiness if people have been ignorant to their own need to shift and change. But if you have been willing to dive in and doing all the things that have been coming up these past several years, that's why I think this energy of like return, reunion, and regeneration in whichever order are the next 3 years, the three R's
Ah,
really apply to the next 3 years. How are you
yeah.
regenerating because of what you have like dismantled? How are you
Ooh.
returning to self because of what you have burned away? Now, what are you reuniting with in your life,
Ooh.
self and others, because you made space?
That gave me chills.
Hmm.
Mm.
Because even look at our lives in 2020 when COVID hit. Like compare what you've gone through and like the person that has transformed within you, that spirit that has developed since that. Like I don't know one person that could honestly say I see no difference in myself.
Mhm.
Like how much we've grown
Yeah.
as individuals, but as a collective,
Yeah.
that's pretty incredible.
That is pretty incredible. I'm going to go deeper into this too and see if I can bring through more of that in cosmic consciousness because I think they just gave us a little teaser. I think
I
there's so
think
much
so
more.
too.
Yeah, I'm going
Yeah.
to dive into that. There's more. There's more. Anyway.
And they keep saying, like, remember what we said about karma. Like, this is a massive karmic clearing, too. Like, we are in the depths of karmic cleanup right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we're doing karmic cleanup from lifetimes and from ancestral trauma and from it's not actually in the forefront of our like conscious awareness. And so it's happening behind the scenes. We're like, fractions of our higher self is being pulled together into wholeness in order to do the healing. So like so much is happening. And to give us a little bit of grace in the fact that we will see these R's occur because of these big karmic wrap ups.
Yeah, I agree.
Wow, I
Totally.
can really see it in my own life about the karmic stuff. I'm like, wow,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah, for sure.
cool.
Elise, you pulled cards too?
Mhm. Similar threads. So I pulled from two different decks, Sacred Forest. So one of the pieces being that we're just in a deep
Oh,
passage right now.
Oh, true.
Um,
Oh
you
my
can see
God.
it's kind of like she's coming from darkness and then there's a light. Um, with I'll come to those cards after. The other one I pulled from this Threads of Fate deck, which I don't always use, but when I'm feeling like the dark energy vibes, I really love this deck. And um, pulled the shadow card. It's a little bit hard to see, so I'll just kind of shine it towards the light. But obviously, we've been talking about the shadow, about the dark. But what I really love about this deck is it speaks to different types of like animal energy, herb, all sorts of different energies. And this one speaks to the bat. And I love what it says, that bats are experts at moving through the dark using echolocation. They are unable to see what their surroundings are, but by producing high frequency sounds and listening for the echo of objects close by, they are able to get an incredibly accurate idea of their environment. It's much like doing shadow work. We often don't understand the logic of our subconscious, but we can feel it. It can be uncomfortable. We do not have our senses, but if we trust the process the way the bat trusts its echolocation, our shadow work comes alive in unexpected and magical ways. If you're struggling with things you cannot see in their entirety, call upon the bat as an ally. And then the other two cards that I pulled were the oak, ancient oak, for strength, and the meandering pathway, flow. And when I pulled this at first before, I was like, I don't feel flow. So like, what's this about? But I really feel that this is speaking to flowing within the timeline of things, flowing within, like having to just be like, whoop, I'm going this way. Okay, I'm just going to go with it. Oh, okay, I'm going this way. And when it feels disorienting, because when those timelines are changing within your shadow, within the darkness, within the maybe the heaviness that you're feeling, it can feel like, what the F? Trusting that echolocation, trusting that and connecting into your ability to see and feel within that darkness, even if your brain is like, I don't know where the hell I'm going, and this feels completely overwhelming. Yeah, and that we're passing through it.
Totally. That passage, holy, is that ever the card? It is a passage. It is that like dark tunnel.
Every time I get that card, it gives such like that Outlander vibes.
Yeah, totally. Yes. That's so interesting.
What are you seeing? Where
Me?
the passage? Yeah.
Oh, I see that it gets absolutely pitch black in this passage. Absolutely pitch black. And we go into the passage in like, say, rubby clothes, tattered clothes, dirt on our skin. And as we go through, we're not realizing in these moments where it's absolutely pitch black that our skin is actually being cleansed and our hair is being braided and our clothing is changing. And when we start to emerge into the light, we'll start to notice that, oh my gosh, I have transformed all over, right? Like you come out in a beautiful gown or whatever, just for the image, and your hair is done and you smell of fresh flowers, and all of that transpired in the dark when you could not see anything, but you were just going foot in front of the other, right? And that's what a lot of people are in right now. And that's where a lot of people want to lay down and be like, I'm done. I can't do it. Rightfully so. Rightfully so. But as we start to see these pinpricks of light or the beams of light start to come in, we'll start to notice the gown we're actually wearing and the softness under our feet and what we have transformed into these new timelines of return and reunion and regeneration, right? Like,
Yeah.
But it's hard when it's in the pitch black.
Of course it's hard. When you're in the depths of the shadow stuff, in that transformation, like anything that occurs, it's tricky.
Yeah.
But this is like trust, right? If you're here watching this is like a huge indication. Is like you're going through, like you're getting through it. Trust. And if you need to, just take more naps.
Take your naps, totally. And like express whatever you can in the moon energy, whether you talk to the moon, whether you get a canvas and you paint, whether you dance it out, whether you cry, whether you journal, like use the energy of this moon to express it all out. Let your mind have free reign in its expression. Everything you're thinking, feeling, seeing, whatever, get it out.
Yeah.
And then take a breath.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it just gets so stuck in the mind. So I think with that planetary energy, Mercury, Gemini, mind, full moon, it's this beautiful time to just let your mind just release. Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing. Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. We wish you a beautiful Friday the 13th and a beautiful full moon on the 15th. And please do share and subscribe and like and all that fun stuff. And we will see you all next week.